The dawn of betrayal. The twin suns of Kepler 452 rose over the eastern valleys, painting the agricultural fields in shades of gold and violet. Marcus Chin stood at the edge of his family's wheat plantation, watching the morning mist burn away from the crops. The grain swayed gently in the breeze, and the air smelled of earth and growth. This was his home, the only world he had ever known, and it was perfect. Marcus was 28 years old, tall and lean from years of physical work. His family had been among the first settlers to arrive on Kepler 452, back when humanity was still expanding cautiously into the galaxy. That was over 70 years ago. Now, the colony thrived with nearly 2 million people, human and alien alike, living together in peace. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Thessa approaching through the rows of wheat. She was Vorlani, one of the many alien species that had found refuge on human worlds after the Great Scourge War ended. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her eyes were large and dark, adapted for the dim light of her original homeworld. She carried a data tablet in her 6-fingered hands. "The soil readings are excellent this season," Thessa said, her voice carrying the musical accent of her people. "Your grandfather would be proud of what you have built here." Marcus smiled. "Our grandfather," he corrected gently. "He taught both our families how to farm this land." Thessa's expression softened. It was true. When her grandmother had arrived on Kepler 452 as a refugee 50 years ago, she knew nothing of agriculture. She had been a soldier in the Vorlani Dominion's war machine, fighting in battles that consumed entire star systems. Marcus's grandfather had taken her in, taught her family how to grow food instead of wage war, and helped them build a new life. That was humanity's way. When they had arrived in the galaxy 150 years ago, they found a universe tearing itself apart. 8 major species were locked in the Great Scourge War, a conflict so brutal that entire planets were being sterilized. Billions died every year. The galaxy was drowning in blood. Humanity had the technology to tip the balance. Their weapons were advanced, their tactics refined through centuries of their own wars. Any side would have welcomed humanity as an ally. But humanity chose differently. They forced everyone to stop fighting. The Treaty of New Geneva took 5 years to negotiate. Humanity made every species disarm. They demanded the destruction of planet-killing weapons. They required all military fleets to be reduced to minimal defense forces. And humanity led by example, dismantling most of their own military power. For 150 years, humanity had kept the peace. They opened their colonies to refugees. They shared technology freely. They stationed small peacekeeping fleets at strategic points across the galaxy. The cost was enormous, but humanity bore it willingly. They believed in the peace they had created. Marcus had grown up in that peace. He had never seen war. The stories his grandfather told seemed like ancient history, tales from another age. War was something that happened long ago, not something that could touch his life. "Race you to the irrigation controls?" Thessa asked, breaking into his thoughts. "You have 6 fingers on each hand and better reflexes," Marcus protested. "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair," Thessa replied with a grin. "But I will give you a 3-second head start." Marcus was already running. Behind him, he heard Thessa's laugh, that musical sound he had known since childhood. They had grown up together, worked these fields side by side, and built a friendship that transcended species. This was what the peace had created. This was why humanity's sacrifice mattered. He was halfway to the control station when the sky turned white. The flash was so bright that Marcus fell to his knees, hands covering his eyes. Pain shot through his head. For a moment, he thought he had gone blind. Then the light faded, leaving purple afterimages dancing in his vision. He blinked hard, trying to clear his sight. When he could see again, he looked up at the sky. Ships hung in orbit. Dozens of them. They were Vorlani design. He recognized the elegant curved hulls and the distinctive triple-engine configuration. But these were not cargo vessels or passenger transports. These were warships, massive battlecruisers bristling with weapons that should not exist. No, Thessa whispered beside him. Her voice carried a horror that made Marcus's blood run cold. No, this cannot be happening. What is it? Marcus asked. Thessa, what are those ships? Another flash of light cut across the sky, this time to the south. Then another to the west. The ground shook beneath their feet. In the distance, a pillar of fire rose into the sky where the city of New Promise had stood moments before. Marcus had friends in New Promise. 20,000 people lived there. Run! Thessa grabbed Marcus's arm, her grip painfully tight. We have to run now. They sprinted toward Marcus's farmhouse. Around them, other farmers were emerging from their homes, staring at the sky in confusion and fear. Some pointed. Some screamed. Behind them, more flashes of light appeared as orbital weapons fired down at the surface, targeting cities, spaceports, and communication centers. Marcus's house was small but sturdy, built by his grandfather with deep foundations and reinforced walls. It had a basement that doubled as a storm shelter, designed to protect against Kepler 452's occasional severe weather. They tumbled down the stairs as the world above them began to burn. The walls shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Marcus fumbled for the emergency radio and switched it on. Static filled the air, then a voice broke through. All human settlements under attack. Repeat, Vorlani Dominion forces are firing on civilian populations across Kepler 452. No warning was given. This is not a drill. Seek shelter immediately. The signal died, then returned with different voices. Earth Command reports attacks on 17 human worlds simultaneously. Vorlani fleet compositions match pre-war configurations. These are military vessels. Casualty estimates in the millions already. Repeat, millions of casualties. Marcus stared at the radio, unable to process what he was hearing. 17 worlds. Millions dead. This was not a border skirmish or a terrorist attack. This was genocide. They waited, Thessa said quietly. She had slumped against the wall, her head in her hands. They waited and planned and prepared. Oh ancestors, they planned this for so long. I don't understand, Marcus said. His hands were shaking. The treaty. The peace. It's been 150 years. Exactly 150 years, Thessa replied, her voice bitter. Do you know what the Vorlani Dominion called those years? The time of shame. They taught it in their schools. How humanity humiliated us. How we were forced to disarm. How our rightful destiny of conquest was stolen from us. She looked at Marcus, and he saw tears streaming down her face. My family ran from that thinking. We were grateful to humanity for stopping the war. We wanted peace. But we were the minority. Most Vorlani never forgot. They never forgave. They saw humanity's mercy as weakness. Marcus tried the radio again, cycling through emergency frequencies. Most were dead air. On one channel, he caught a fragment of transmission. Earth fleet engaging Vorlani forces in orbit. Casualties mounting. They have dreadnoughts. Multiple dreadnoughts. How did they build this fleet without detection? Then nothing. They're attacking Earth, Marcus said, feeling ice in his chest. Earth was the heart of human space, the birthplace of their species. If Earth falls, then humanity falls, Thessa finished. This is a coordinated extermination. They're hitting every human world at once, killing as many as possible before any response can be organized. The basement shook again. Through the small window near the ceiling, Marcus could see orange light flickering. Fire. His fields were burning. The crops he had spent months nurturing were turning to ash. He thought of his neighbors. The Rodriguez family who lived 2 farms over. Old Mr. Kim who made the best kimchi in the colony. Young Sarah who wanted to be a teacher. Were they dead? Were they hiding in basements like him, listening to the world end? We cannot stay here, Thessa said. She moved to a storage locker in the corner. Your grandfather showed my grandmother this once. He said every human farm has one. She pulled out a sealed case. Inside was an emergency beacon, water purification tablets, medical supplies, and a map showing evacuation routes to safe zones. Humanity had maintained these caches on every colony, just in case. Just in case the peace they had worked so hard to build ever failed. Marcus studied the map. There's a spaceport at Unity Station. 15 kilometers north. If it still exists, Thessa replied. If it doesn't, we die here, Marcus said. He was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. I would rather die trying to escape than wait for a bomb to find us. They gathered supplies quickly. Marcus took one last look around the basement. His grandfather had built this house with his own hands. His father had expanded it. Marcus had planned to pass it to his own children someday. Now it would be ash and rubble. They emerged into a world transformed. The sky glowed red with burning settlements. Overhead, Vorlani ships continued firing, their weapons painting lines of light across the heavens. Closer, Marcus could see drop ships landing, deploying soldiers to finish what the orbital bombardment had started. They will kill me too, Thessa said quietly. I am with you. To them, I am a traitor. Then we run together, Marcus replied. Come on. They moved north, keeping to tree lines and irrigation ditches. Around them, Kepler 452 died. The world that had known only peace for 3 generations learned what war meant in a single morning. They passed other refugees, humans and aliens alike, all fleeing north toward Unity Station. Some were injured, burned by fires or hit by shrapnel. Others carried children or helped elderly neighbors. One woman stumbled past carrying a baby, her face blank with shock. The journey that should have taken 2 hours stretched to 6. Twice they had to hide as Vorlani patrol craft swept overhead, hunting for survivors. Once they heard weapons fire to the east and saw smoke rising from what had been a residential district. When they finally reached Unity Station, Marcus's heart sank. The main terminal was a burning ruin. Half the landing pads were destroyed. But in the distance, he could see ships still launching, blasting into orbit in desperate attempts to escape. They ran toward the remaining functional pads. A transport ship sat there, its cargo ramp still down, refugees streaming aboard. A human security officer in a damaged uniform waved people forward. Move, move. We launch in 3 minutes whether we're full or not. Marcus and Thessa pushed into the crowd. Bodies pressed against them from all sides. The smell of smoke and fear filled the air. They stumbled up the ramp into the cargo hold. Inside, the space had been hastily converted for passengers. No seats, just floor space and handrails. People packed in shoulder to shoulder. Marcus saw humans mostly, but also other species. Some Vorlani like Thessa, their faces marked with shame and fear. Some Krillian merchants. Even a group of Kelter children crying for their parents. Marcus. Thessa's voice cut through the chaos. She had found a spot near the wall. Marcus pushed through to join her. The ramp closed with a hydraulic hiss. The ship's engines began to wind up, building to a roar that shook the hold. Through the small windows, Marcus caught one last glimpse of Kepler 452. The entire southern continent glowed with fire. Cities that had stood for decades were gone. Farmland that had fed millions was burning. Vorlani warships still hung in orbit like predators, continuing their systematic destruction. Then the transport lurched upward. Acceleration pressed everyone against the rear bulkhead. Marcus closed his eyes and held on as the ship fought its way into orbit, running from the only home he had ever known. Around him, people wept. Some prayed. Others sat in stunned silence. A little girl near Marcus asked her mother when they could go home. Her mother had no answer. Thessa leaned close to Marcus and whispered, "They did this to every human world. All at once. Do you understand what that means?" Marcus understood. It meant the Vorlani Dominion had spent 150 years planning this genocide. It meant they had secretly rebuilt their entire military machine while humanity trusted the peace they had created. It meant billions were dead or dying across human space. And it meant humanity would have to decide who they wanted to be. The merciful peacekeepers who had spent 150 years protecting the galaxy. Or something else. Something the galaxy had not seen since humanity first arrived with weapons that made whole species tremble. Marcus looked out the window at the stars. They looked the same as always. Beautiful, peaceful, uncaring about the genocide happening below them. But humanity cared. And soon, the galaxy would remember why they had once feared the newcomers from Earth. The transport jumped to hyperspace, carrying its cargo of survivors toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Kepler 452 burned, adding its name to the long list of human worlds destroyed in a single day. The time of shame was over. What came next would be remembered for far longer. The sleeping giant awakens. The Earth Defense Command Center sat buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, protected by layers of reinforced alloys and energy shields that could withstand a direct nuclear strike. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood in the main operations room, her dark eyes scanning the holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red markers bloomed across human space like drops of blood in water. 17 worlds. No, the display updated. 23 worlds now. Each red marker represented millions of dead. Sarah was 52 years old, a career officer who had spent 30 years in Earth's defense fleet. She had gray streaking through her black hair, and her face carried the lines of someone who rarely smiled. She had joined the military believing in humanity's mission as peacekeepers. Now she watched that mission burn. "Status report," she said, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. Commander James Park stepped forward, his tablet glowing with incoming data. 23 confirmed attacks. Vorlani battle groups hit every major human colony simultaneously. Casualties estimated at 4 billion and climbing. They're targeting civilian population centers first, then military installations. 4 billion. Sarah felt the number like a physical weight. 4 billion lives ended in a matter of hours. Our response, she asked. Colonial defense fleets are engaging where possible, but they're outnumbered 10 to 1. The Vorlani brought dreadnoughts, Admiral. Full battle configurations with weapons we thought were dismantled decades ago. Our peacekeeping vessels weren't designed for this kind of fight. Sarah turned to the main display. The Treaty of New Geneva had required all species to reduce their militaries to minimal defense forces. Humanity had led by example, converting their massive war fleets into smaller peacekeeping groups. They kept enough firepower to enforce the treaty, but nothing like the armadas they had possessed when they first arrived in the galaxy. The Vorlani had clearly not been so honest. "How many ships do they have?" Sarah asked. Current estimates suggest over 8,000 warships. Full military configurations. This isn't something they built in a few years, Admiral. This took decades of secret construction. 8,000 warships. While humanity had been maintaining peace, protecting trade routes, and mediating disputes, the Vorlani had been preparing for genocide. "Get me the Security Council," Sarah ordered. Now. Within minutes, the holographic display shifted to show the faces of Earth's leadership. President Catherine Morrison sat at the center, her face pale but composed. Around her were the representatives of Earth's unified government, men and women who had spent their careers working for peace. "Admiral Okonkwo," President Morrison said. "Tell us how bad it is." Sarah did not soften her words. We're losing, Madam President. 23 worlds attacked, 4 billion dead. The Vorlani fleet outnumbers our colonial defense forces significantly. If we don't respond with overwhelming force immediately, humanity will be extinct within a week. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Secretary General Chen spoke. What kind of response are you proposing, Admiral? We need to mobilize everything we have. Every defense ship, every reserve vessel, every piece of military hardware we've kept in storage. We need to hit back hard enough to make them stop. That would violate the Treaty of New Geneva, Foreign Minister Abra pointed out. The treaty we spent 150 years enforcing. The treaty is dead, Sarah said flatly. The Vorlani killed it when they fired on civilians. We either respond or we die. President Morrison leaned forward. Admiral, our current military strength is approximately 900 vessels. Most are peacekeeping frigates and destroyers. We have perhaps 50 ships that could be called warships by old standards. How do we fight 8,000 Vorlani dreadnoughts with that? Sarah had been waiting for this question. She took a breath and said the words that would change everything. We don't, Madam President. We activate Project Reckoning. The Security Council members looked at each other in confusion. Only President Morrison and 2 others showed recognition, and their faces went pale. That project was supposed to be theoretical, Morrison said quietly. It was never theoretical, Sarah replied. When humanity agreed to disarm under the Treaty of New Geneva, we knew we were taking a risk. We believed in peace, but we weren't fools. Project Reckoning was our insurance policy. She brought up new data on the display. Deep in interstellar space, far from any inhabited system, were coordinates that marked the locations of 17 hidden facilities. When we dismantled our war fleets, we didn't destroy everything. We preserved our most advanced weapons, our best warships, and our most powerful technologies. We stored them in hidden shipyards scattered across deep space. For 150 years, skeleton crews have maintained these facilities, keeping everything operational just in case. Commander Park pulled up detailed schematics. The Security Council members stared in shock at what they saw. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything currently in service. Fusion lances capable of cracking planets. Kinetic bombardment systems that could turn moons to dust. Fleet coordination networks that made modern systems look primitive. This is what humanity brought to the galaxy 150 years ago, Sarah continued. This is what made entire species surrender rather than face us in battle. We chose peace, but we never forgot how to wage war. Foreign Minister Abra found her voice. How many ships are we talking about? 3,000 capital ships. 12,000 support vessels. Enough firepower to fight the Vorlani on equal terms. Sarah paused. Enough to win. President Morrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the command center. Below, hundreds of personnel worked frantically to coordinate humanity's desperate defense. She was silent for a long moment. If we activate Project Reckoning, we become what we swore never to be again, she said quietly. We become conquerors. Warriors. The very thing we tried to leave behind. No, Madam President, Sarah replied. We become survivors. The Vorlani made their choice. They chose genocide. We can choose extinction or we can choose to fight. There is no third option. Morrison turned back to face the council. How long to activate the project? The facilities can be operational within 48 hours. Full fleet deployment in 72 hours. And in those 72 hours, how many more will die? Sarah met the president's eyes. Billions. But if we don't act, everyone dies. Every human in the galaxy. The vote took 5 minutes. It was unanimous. Humanity would unleash what it had sworn to keep locked away. As the council meeting ended, Sarah received a message that the first transport ships from the attacked colonies were arriving at Earth. She made her way to the orbital docking station, taking a shuttle up from the command center. The station was chaos. Medical teams rushed to help injured survivors. Families searched desperately for missing loved ones. The air smelled of smoke and fear and grief. Sarah walked through the crowds, seeing the cost of peace written on every face. She found the arrival area for the transport from Kepler 452. Hundreds of refugees stumbled off the ship, many injured, all traumatized. Sarah was scanning the crowd when a young man approached her. He was tall and lean, with burn marks on his arms and ash in his dark hair. "Are you in charge?" he asked. His voice was rough with smoke damage. "Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, Earth Defense Fleet," she replied. "Who are you?" "Marcus Chen. I'm from Kepler 452. I watched my world burn." He looked directly at her, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her pause. Not just grief or fear. Determination. "I want to fight. Whatever you're planning, whatever you're going to do to stop them, I want to be part of it." Behind Marcus, a Vorlani woman stepped forward. "So do I," she said. "My name is Thessa. The Dominion killed my family along with his world. They call people like me traitors. I call them murderers." Sarah looked at them both. A human farmer and a Vorlani refugee, united by loss and rage. In that moment, she saw what this war would be. Not human against alien, but civilization against barbarism. Peace against genocide. "Can either of you fly a ship?" Sarah asked. "I can," Thessa replied. "I was trained as a pilot before my family fled the Dominion." "Then you're both conscripted into the defense fleet as of now. Report to Recruitment Station 7. Tell them Admiral Okonkwo sent you." She paused. "And prepare yourselves. What comes next will not be easy." Marcus nodded. "Nothing about this is easy. But I'd rather die fighting than hide while my species is exterminated." As they walked away, Sarah returned to the command center. The activation codes for Project Reckoning had been sent. Across deep space, in hidden facilities that had waited silently for 150 years, ancient shipyards were coming back to life. She pulled up the tactical display again. The Vorlani fleet was advancing on more human colonies, confident in their superiority. They believed humanity was weak, that 150 years of peace had made them soft. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the deepest reaches of space, in a region known only by coordinates, the first of humanity's hidden dreadnoughts powered up its engines. The ship was called Retribution, and it was 5 kilometers long. Its hull was black as void, covered in weapons that had been kept in perfect condition for 15 decades. Its fusion reactors came online, generating enough power to supply a small planet. Captain Amara Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her crew around her. They were the descendants of the original caretakers, families who had spent generations maintaining these ships, waiting for a day they hoped would never come. "All systems operational," her tactical officer reported. "Weapons charged. Engines at full capacity. We are ready for war, Captain." Amara looked at the main view screen, which showed the distant stars. She had been born on this ship, raised in its corridors. Her grandmother had been part of the original crew that brought Retribution to this hidden shipyard. For 3 generations, her family had kept this ship ready. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Maximum speed. It's time to remind the galaxy why they once feared us." Across deep space, thousands of other ships were receiving the same orders. Humanity's hidden fleet was waking up, and it was angry. Back on Earth, Sarah Okonkwo stood in the command center and watched the tactical display update. The Vorlani had attacked 30 human worlds now. 6 billion dead. But in 72 hours, that would change. She thought about the Treaty of New Geneva, the document that had brought peace to the galaxy. Humanity had sacrificed so much to make that peace real. They had disarmed. They had opened their worlds to refugees. They had spent resources and lives maintaining order. And the galaxy had repaid them with genocide. President Morrison's words echoed in Sarah's mind. We become what we swore never to be again. Perhaps. But there was a difference between conquest and survival. Humanity had tried mercy. They had tried peace. They had given the galaxy 150 years of protection and received betrayal in return. Now the galaxy would see what happened when you attacked humanity's children. When you burned their worlds and killed their innocence. When you mistook mercy for weakness. The Vorlani Dominion wanted war. They wanted to reclaim their pride through genocide. They wanted to prove that humanity's peace was built on sand. They were about to learn it was built on steel. Steel that had been waiting patiently in the darkness, maintained and ready, for the day when peace failed. That day had come. Sarah opened a channel to all Earth Defense Force personnel across the planet and in orbit. Her message was broadcast to every ship, every base, every station where humans served. This is Admiral Okonkwo to all defense forces. In 48 hours, we activate Project Reckoning. In 72 hours, we launch a counteroffensive the likes of which this galaxy has not seen in 150 years. The Vorlani Dominion believes we are weak. They believe peace made us soft. They are wrong. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. We gave them 150 years of peace. We protected them from themselves. We built a galaxy where species could coexist without fear. And they repaid us with genocide. 6 billion of our people are dead. 30 worlds are burning. This ends now. Humanity tried mercy. We tried to be better than our violent past. But mercy has limits. Peace has a price. And when you attack our families, when you burn our worlds, when you commit genocide against our species, you will learn what humanity becomes when we stop being merciful. We are calling up every reserve. We are activating every ship. We are bringing out weapons the galaxy thought we had destroyed. And we are going to show the Vorlani Dominion what it means to awaken a sleeping giant. To all personnel, prepare for total war. This is not peacekeeping. This is not a rescue mission. This is survival. We fight or we die. And I promise you, we will fight. The message ended. Across Earth and throughout human space, millions of people heard those words. Military personnel reported to their stations. Civilians volunteered for service. Factories began retooling for war production. The entire human civilization mobilized for the first time in 150 years. In orbit, Marcus Chen and Thessa stood in line with thousands of other volunteers, waiting to be processed. They had been given temporary uniforms and assigned to training groups. Around them, humans and aliens who had lived on human worlds stood together, united by loss and determination. Do you think we can win? Marcus asked quietly. Thessa looked at him, her large dark eyes reflecting the lights of the station. I don't know. But I know the Dominion made a mistake. They thought humanity had forgotten how to fight. They thought 150 years of peace meant weakness. But my grandmother told me stories about when humanity first came to the galaxy. She said they were terrifying. Not because they were cruel, but because they were efficient. They fought wars the way humans do everything else, with precision and determination and complete commitment. She gestured at the thousands of volunteers around them. Look at these people. Farmers, teachers, merchants, engineers. None of them are soldiers. But the Dominion killed their families. Burned their homes. And now they want revenge. That's what the Dominion doesn't understand. They didn't just attack humanity's military. They attacked humanity's heart. And humans protect their hearts with everything they have. Marcus nodded slowly. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught Vorlani refugees how to farm. Who had shown mercy to former enemies. Who had believed in peace so deeply that he dedicated his life to building it. That peace was dead now, burned with Kepler 452 and 30 other worlds. But Marcus would fight to ensure his grandfather's sacrifice meant something. He would fight so that someday, maybe, peace could exist again. Not the naive peace of mercy given freely, but the hard peace of strength respected and consequences enforced. The galaxy had forgotten that humanity chose peace. They thought it was humanity's nature. They were about to learn it was humanity's choice. And when you force someone to abandon their choice, you face what lies beneath. Beneath humanity's mercy was something the galaxy had not seen in 150 years. Something that made species surrender rather than fight. Something that had ended the Great Scourge War not through negotiation, but through overwhelming force. The Vorlani Dominion wanted to reclaim their pride. They wanted their time of conquest back. They wanted to prove they were the superior species. In 72 hours, they would get their war. And they would learn that some species survive not because they are the strongest or the most ruthless, but because they understand something fundamental that others forget. Humanity knows how to adapt. They know how to endure. And when pushed beyond all limits, they know how to become exactly what their enemies need them to be. The Vorlani wanted warriors. They wanted conquerors. They wanted to face humanity at its most terrible. Their wish was about to be granted. In deep space, thousands of warships continued powering up, their weapons charging, their crews preparing. The sleeping giant was waking, and it was not merciful anymore.